I had used anxiety for a long time as my go-to method for timekeeping, which is probably not the healthiest coping mechanism. One of the lessons I've learned about kids is to always assume that they're trying their best. They're not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time.
Listen up, ADHD fam. Will Kerb of Hacking Your ADHD joins us today to share his journey from being diagnosed at 22 to then discovering novel solutions to ADHD challenges and then sharing them with as many ADHD adults as he possibly can. In this conversation, Will discusses the power of radical acceptance in managing his own ADHD, including how he's moved away from using anxiety as a time management system and toward embracing external tools like time timers, calendars, and day planners. You'll hear his practical insights on parenting two ADHD children, including his approach to those particularly challenging mornings. And I quote, "They are not giving you a hard time, they are having a hard time." Will reveals why he views ADHD as an integral part of his identity, sharing how his ability to connect seemingly unrelated ideas fuels his creativity and problem-solving skills. He also breaks down his favorite hacks, from command hooks for visual organization all the way to changing behavioral sequencing to make tasks stick. I'm Stephen Tonti, Aaron Smith is with me, and you're tuned in to Attention Different. Let's jump in. So Aaron, before we even get introduced, this is our cold open. You got here and you said last night was a bit of an ADHD shit show. What happened?
Yes. So yeah, last night, like Alexis, my wife, has been having some issues sleeping and trying to manage ADHD medication kind of debacle stuff. She's been trying to take medicine at different times and then play with caffeine instead of a booster pill in the afternoon and other things like that to try to help not keep her up. She's been trying different iterations of this over the past few weeks. And then last night she thought she'd figured it out. Like, she excitedly was like, "The past 2 nights have been great. I've got sleep, and this is the magic secret."
Nailed
here.
it.
Yeah, she got it. And then lo and behold, 4 a.m, I like feel her like tossing around. I look over, I'm like, "Are you awake?" She's like, "Yes." I'm like, "Oh no."
Oh no.
And so she obviously woke me up, and then I had to spend kind of about an hour trying to get her back to sleep, which happened. But then, it just was one of those things that happens with ADHD, right?
Dare I say, we are speaking to Hacking Your ADHD, Will Kerb, and I feel like this is going to segue perfectly into this overall discussion. So was it soothing, calming chamomile tea? Was it like go meditate for a
It was
bit?
very simple. I mean, I think some of this is anxiety related too, right? Because like stimulants and anxiety are not the greatest mix. What I did is she got up, she went in the living room, she was laying on the couch. We have a nice big comfy couch over there. And I brought her a fuzzy blanket and I laid down with her for a little bit, tucked her in, and, just kind of rubbed her head a little bit. And then she fell back asleep. And that was it.
Okay. Hey,
That's pretty good.
that's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the Attention Different podcast. This is, of course, Stephen Tonti and someone taking a sip of his coffee.
Aaron Smith.
Nice.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. All right. So this is Aaron Smith and Stephen Tonti of the Attention Different podcast. And we've got our producer, David, somewhere in the background. Today, we have William Kerb on the podcast, host of Hacking Your ADHD, born in Hawaii on Oahu, and spent his formative years there. He graduated with a BA in English from the University of Puget Sound in 2008 and discovered his ADHD diagnosis in 2011. He is the father of 2 children, one 10, one 7, and now lives in Washington, just outside of Seattle. Hey, Will. It's lovely to see you. Welcome to the Attention Different podcast. How you doing?
Doing really well. I'm glad to be here. Excited.
So Will, tell us a bit about yourself. Just introduce yourself. Say hey.
I run the podcast Hacking Your ADHD. We just recently passed 200 episodes, so it's been 5 years podcasting. So it's been a great journey doing that. And it's been, I always get stumped and like introduce myself because I'm like, I already all know these things. What do I have to say? And I'm like, oh yeah, other people don't have the same brain as I do. And that's kind of what the podcast has been exploring. It's like, oh, I don't have the same brain as other people. How do I work with that in these systems that I think are supposed to work for me?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us again that milestone that you passed. 200 episodes and 5 years podcasting.
Wow. That's pretty cool. 200 episodes and 5 years of
Hacking Your
Wow.
ADHD. Yeah.
Wow. That's
Impressive. And
amazing.
a really cool pair of red glasses, may I just say. The frames are dope. Yeah.
Thanks.
For the people who are listening only, Will's sporting a pretty cool pair of glasses and a dope t-shirt as well, which I think is going to come back around to where you were born and where you come from. I'm seeing a little bit of the Hawaii on you today.
Yeah. This is a Christmas present from the wife, so it's nice and bright.
Yeah. Love it.
So Aaron, take us away.
Okay. So I probably asked you a few of these when we chat in Anaheim, but how do you identify as someone who has ADHD? How do you identify? Do you say I am, I have, or a person with ADHD or something else?
This is interesting too, because I do a lot of my podcast episodes are written out, they're monologue format and I'm writing. So I have to use a number of things just to keep it interesting for myself. I often am saying like, I have ADHD, like, cause that's how I start out every podcast. Like, this is Hacking Your ADHD. I'm William Kerb and I have ADHD. So that's probably the primary way I identify, but I do go with ADHDers and a number of other things just because I need to change things up. And I don't mind identifying with it being something that is very much a part of like every part of me.
Yeah. Sounds like you embrace a bit of the neurodivergent framework of identifying that it's like part of you, and while the label might be imperfect, it's a part of your brain. That ADHD is you are your brain, and you can't really separate.
Yeah, because I've definitely had people being like, oh, if you could cure your ADHD, would you? I'm like, that's a very loaded question with cure, but it's also like, oh, if I just didn't have ADHD tomorrow, who would I be? I don't know. It's so embedded into my identity. That it would be weird to think, okay, well, how would my brain operate? And I've like kind of like teased around with that idea. And I'm like, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, if I didn't have ADHD, I wouldn't have any more problems. Like, that's clearly not true. Everyone I know has problems.
Yeah. ADHD or not, right? Yeah.
What a sentence. Yeah.
It can be a big cause of many of my problems, but it just not having it wouldn't solve everything. So I think just working with it is a much better kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Amen.
And it's also, I would venture to guess, part of what drives some of your strengths and some of the success you've had and other things like that. You might not be able to have those things without ADHD either.
Absolutely. There's always the creativity piece that a lot of people talk about. What I see a lot of is because I have so many interests, I can really connect a lot of different ideas. So I'm like, oh, I was reading about that and I can see how that connects here. And that connection is, I think, what really strengthens that creativity piece. It's not just, oh, I'm having no ideas. I'm like, no, I'm seeing connections that other people don't see. I'm seeing patterns. I'm seeing different ways things should go together. And that is making brand new stuff that otherwise I would have no idea about.
Couldn't agree more.
Totally.
Absolutely.
I can relate with that.
It brings me back to that lecture we gave one time at formerly Chad with the blue and the red pill. We actually used a matrix framing to be like, if you could take this pill and your ADHD would go away tomorrow, would you do it? And we polled the audience. Like we used Mike and Ike's. And we let them put their Mike and Ike in a metal bucket, and we gave like the percentage of who said they would and who they wouldn't. But I think this does get at a really fundamental question, right? The radical acceptance question, the concept of how does this condition define us? Does it define us? Do we let it define us? This is a great place to start off, because I feel like in the hacking your ADHD, even that sentiment of hacking this thing, right? Of reprogramming, deprogramming, these are kind of some of the ideas that come to my mind when I hear about the title of your show. And yeah, I'm just really curious, but I'm getting ahead of ourselves. We have two more questions. Yeah, Aaron?
Well, do you want to answer the one Stephen just posed around accepting yourself fully with ADHD?
Whenever I do like a list of like, what's the most important thing I can do with my ADHD, acceptance is like always like one of the number one things, because if I can look at all my problems through the lens of I have ADHD, then it's so much easier to solve my problems. Because if I just like, oh, I need to do this, and I think, oh, I need to try harder, or I need to do it this way that I've read about on the internet, and I'm like, well, no, how can I do this when I'm working with my ADHD instead of against it? Because I do get into things where I'm like, why can't I just do this? And it's like, oh, it's because the ADHD. That's why that's hard. Oh, okay. Well, how do I? And when I have that like moment, I'm like, this means I need to think about this in a different way. Think about this in terms of how do I work with my ADHD to solve this problem, instead of being like, well, this is how it should work. How does it actually work, and how can I make it move forward with that? And so I think acceptance of ADHD is like the number one thing to like move forward with doing stuff with your ADHD.
I agree 100%. I agree. Yeah. I'm an ADHD coach and therapist. So I've been at this game over 10 years, and I have just experienced that with all the clients I've worked with, it's like when they come to accept themselves fully, a light bulb goes off and they, a whole world opens up of, well, what can I do with my brain instead of working against it and trying to fit in and be like a neurotypical. And that it's just a very different approach, right?
Mhm.
So next question is, when were you diagnosed? What age?
22, I think. It was after college and see, probably like around 2010 or so. So about 15 years ago.
Okay. What brought about that diagnosis? What was going on in your life that kind of led you to that?
It was actually that I have three siblings and all of them had been diagnosed with ADHD. And one of them mentioned that it was genetic. And I was like, oh, I should look into that then.
All four? Did I just do the math right? There's four of you and you all have ADHD?
That is not too unlikely in retrospect. Like, oh yeah, both my parents definitely had
Yeah,
ADHD
I
as
was
well.
gonna ask.
Just
That was my next question.
Mm,
Yeah, the heritability rate, it has to be
yeah,
both parents in that situation.
neither of them diagnosed, of course. But
Right.
it's even funny. Like when I was like doing some of the diagnostic process, I was like looking through like old school reports, and I had one from like kindergarten that said I should be assessed for ADHD. At the time I was assessed for dyslexia and definitely am dyslexic. We just never went down that route because it was the 80s and
Well, yeah, I
that's
was about to ask
yeah.
what forgive me, but this kindergarten teacher sounds like, way ahead of their time. Where were you first assessed in kindergarten in the '80s?
my mom sent me to this school called Assets in Hawaii on Oahu that was for gifted and dyslexic students. So it had a huge population of ADHD kids too, because dyslexia is
Right.
so comorbid with ADHD. Their comorbid rates are like 50%, whereas they're like, if you have one, you should be assessed for the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so when I was after college, like went in and went through the full assessment process, and they were like, "Yeah, this is definitely on there." And then I didn't do anything about it for many years.
I just looked it up just to interject here for a sec. So the comorbidity between dyslexia and ADHD is between 25 and 40%.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Okay,
it's
Yeah,
very
that's not
high.
yeah,
And that
that's not
might even be
yeah,
low, right? So I actually think
right.
your number is probably more accurate in the real world sense,
Mhm.
probably closer to 50%. Because what I've seen in practice clinically is that a lot of dyslexic kids do not get screened and diagnosed, unless it's very, very severe and it's really impacting their learning. There's a lot that kind of fly through the radar and struggle, and they don't get diagnosed. Or at least not till later. I was probably one of those kids that has dyslexia and dysgraphia and a few other things. Dyscalculia. I had a
Mm.
few of those challenges myself, and wasn't officially diagnosed with any of those, but was pulled out in remedial classes and given extra help and tutoring and all sorts of things, which probably did make a difference. But having gotten properly assessed might have made a difference for me too, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it's weird looking back and being like, "Oh yeah, had I been diagnosed with ADHD as a child, like how that would have like changed the course of like all of my studies."
Mm.
Yeah, that's a good point. What do you
Yeah.
think might have been different had you been screened earlier?
I think, especially for like college, I dropped out of college twice because
Mm,
when I lost that structure of like how high school worked, where I'm like, okay, this is like I go home, I have do my homework here and stuff like that. Made it. I was just like, I was not coping well with running my own schedule. I had been very interested in like computer science for a while, but it was just not something I could keep up with. So I switched to English, which was something I was also very interested in, but also ended up being way easier for me to just like kind of like engage and, for lack of better terms, BS my way through. Be like, yeah, I can interpret this, and I have since learned also that is like a skill that I was like,
Yes.
it's not just
Yeah.
BSing your way through.
No.
It's oh, I understand. Like this is me understanding this material
Right.
very quickly and then being able to like repurpose it for this. Like I didn't realize for a long time that yeah, I can do some pretty good writing, and that's like a big part of what the podcast is now. It's like, oh, I'm
yeah.
people enjoy this writing that I do, and it's because I'm good at it. And that's
Mhm.
still very hard to admit, but it is like, oh, this is a skill, and I've honed it over many years now.
Amazing.
Heard.
Amazing. Yeah. You
Yeah.
pushed through and even with the difficulties graduated. And when we think about the rates of people with ADHD graduating, even just
Mhm.
graduating college, it's pretty low. I think it's around like 40% of memory serves me of people with ADHD not graduating college.
Yeah, I was talking with someone at the conference, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're just finishing up my PhD program," and I'm like, "Oh man." congratulations. You are in a rare percentile now,
Yeah.
having a PhD and having ADHD. And they were
Yeah.
like, oh, I had no idea. I'm like, yeah, you are.
Yeah, advanced degrees and PhDs, that's even smaller proportion of
Yeah.
folks that make it through that. It's because it challenges our executive functions, the day-to-day life stuff of managing a schedule, getting to classes.
So I went to, in sixth grade, I went to a boarding school. And so I had like these study halls every day. It was some of the worst stuff ever to just have to sit there. And like, even if I didn't have homework, I just had to sit there. I did really well in middle school because of that, because like, I was like, well, I have, like, if I'm going to be sitting here, I'm going to be doing this homework. But that also like did not serve me going into other school things, because then it was like, oh, I don't learn any of the skills on how to do that. I just had someone, it wasn't
Right.
accountability, it was like the threat of more.
No, it was authoritarian.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm hearing like process versus result, result versus process. It's like the institution being like, we want this result, but we don't care to teach you, the child, the student, about the process. We just want the result.
I think there's a lot of baked in assumptions of like throw them in the deep end, see if they can swim. Hopefully, most people can just read the nuances and read between the
Right.
lines and figure out how to adult in that manner. You know, a lot of people kind of figure it out miraculously, but the neurodivergent folks,
Right.
we need some more of a playbook and we need a little bit more assistance. And maybe now, at least, I think some schools, better schools, are doing a little bit of that.
Right.
But definitely was not in my high school, and
Right. And
doesn't
yeah,
sound like it was in your high
careful.
school either, Will.
Yeah. I'm relating quite deeply to your early days education, and then I'm quite blessed. I went to an institution in Dallas, a private school that had professors and staff there who I will call woke, for lack of a more exacting term, but like they were just more, they were younger, more kind of ferocious about tuning up their education skills. Stacking their educator skill stack. So I got that early ADD screening at 10, not even 7, because the staff at Cedarwood just knew what they were talking about. They had done the research. So that helped set the tone going forward with like other teachers in my life teaching me how to learn, not just to learn, right? Learning how to learn is, I feel like,
Yeah.
kind of what we're getting at here. A lot of institutions don't teach their students how to learn. They just teach them stuff, right? And you're expected to learn by rote.
Yeah. Well, and also with like the going to college idea too, is as a developmental delay, like we are not the same responsibility level as our peers when we get there. It's like something that I talked about with my kids, where my daughter's like, oh, I want to, start babysitting at some point. I'm like, it's going to be a while before you can do that, because while you are a very responsible kid, we don't want to put you in a bad situation.
Right.
Yeah, the developmental maturity of ADHDers is 3 to 5 years behind their peers. We may be advanced in some areas, maybe verbally or in certain areas, but the hallmark of a disability is that there's those gaps in functioning, that there's
Yeah.
like some areas you're excelling, or even average, above average, and some areas you might be low average or even less than that, right? So there's that gap in performance that highlights something's going on.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, first year college, I got really good at playing Halo, but that's not the skill set I really needed to be learning when I was at college.
That wasn't a core class. That wasn't a gen ed class, the Halo 101.
Yeah, are you telling me that my roommate Adam and I brought his projector to Studio A and projected a 700-inch screen to play Call of Duty? We weren't doing school right.
I mean, I feel like you're learning skills there.
Yeah, it was cold, Will. It was Pittsburgh. Snow was everywhere. We had to trudge that stuff through the snow and like set it up like after hours and not get caught and play like a lot of Xbox. It was hard,
All right. So moving on, the next question is, do you take stimulant medications to manage ADHD, to treat your ADHD?
I do, but I also take a non-stimulant as well. Generic Adderall, and then also guanfacine is a non-stimulant that I'm taking now too, which was wild to start. Made me late to things more, because I was suddenly focusing on things better. And I had used anxiety for a long time as my go-to method for timekeeping. Which is probably not the healthiest coping mechanism.
I
But
love it. Yeah.
when was like started this other thing that like the guanfacine on label is blood pressure medication, but is off label used for ADHD and also for emotional regulation stuff.
And count me naive, but are we talking also like beta blocker kind of things, sort of like the propranolol arena, like stuff that just slows your heart rate, lowers your blood pressure, essentially calms you down?
I have been on a beta blocker before, and that was fantastic. And the
Okay.
doctor's like, "Yeah, you don't need this anymore." I'm like, "Could we? This was for something else, but could we keep that? I liked this." And they're like, "Nope." And I'm like, "Okay."
It's alpha 2 agonist, which you don't ask me to explain exactly what that is, but it is a it was 10x a blood pressure medication, and then they formulated it to last longer.
Mm.
And what that does is it helps increase particularly norepinephrine. So
Oh.
with dopamine, I think that's like kind of a precursor in the catecholamine dopamine chain of things. There's like
Oh.
the way that norepinephrine and dopamine kind of
Yeah.
work together. Um, so sometimes prescribed in combination, it can help. So are you taking it like one at night and then one during the day, or how
Yeah,
do
I
you?
take the guanfacine at night because it can have a sedative effect, which some people will want during the day with their stimulant.
Yeah. So I think if you have hyperactivity, it can kind of help with that core symptom.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
don't have
yeah.
so much of the hyperactive movement side anymore. Like I definitely had that as a child. That's not a primary issue for me anymore, other than like I have to fidget while we're talking.
Yeah, the external hyperactivity as we go through puberty and mature becomes more internal. So it becomes racing thoughts, becomes more impulsive behaviors or fast thinking, that kind of stuff, and less externally, seen.
I will notice this when I'm like playing like some video games with friends, and we'll be like in like the waiting room to go in, and they'll be standing by the door, and I will be just doing hops around them in the room in the thing in the game, and I'm like, oh wow, this is so clearly like
Yeah.
ADHD. I'm not doing this physically, but this is like I just can't let my character just stand still and do nothing.
I kind of love the body doubling in your avatar. Like the idea of like your avatar being the projection of what's inside here.
That's definitely one of the adult symptoms is having trouble waiting for
Mhm.
things.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. New Orleans, Louisiana, everyone drives 10 miles an hour. And I lived in New York and Los Angeles. So every once in a while, I am screaming inside my car alone.
So when we were in Anaheim for the conference, we went to Disneyland afterwards, and they have their accessibility program specifically for people that have trouble waiting in line. And I was just like, this is actual accessibility. I would not do these things if I had to wait in line. My children wouldn't do them. I wouldn't do them. I wouldn't want to wait with them. Instead of waiting in line, you have a 45-minute wait, but you don't have to wait in the line. You just after the 45 minutes are up, you go into the lightning lane and can get on the ride. And I'm like, oh, this is actual accessibility.
That
Like
is so good.
I'm
That is
not,
such a good ADHD hack right there.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
skipping the line, but I'm not having to just stand there.
It's also like, why
Amazing.
haven't amusement parks done
Yes.
that? That's like liquid fluid dynamics of human traffic. That helps with human traffic.
Yeah, like in general, this would be great to integrate everywhere because nobody wants to be doing that hour and a half to ride the Tower of Terror or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not
My
a
mind
fun
is
experience.
exploding. I'm like, why hasn't Six Flags incorporated this years ago? I mean, literally, just from the standpoint of someone who's organizing the grounds, like that eliminates foot traffic in such a huge way. Also, for the people who have shops and vendors, they're getting more money because the people are not waiting in line to do one ride and then do that 3 times and leave. They're roaming the park. They're engaging in other parts of the park.
Yeah.
If I may, Aaron, there's this, you brought it up and I wanted to ask earlier, and this is a good time. So you have offspring, you have procreated, there are children, there are little curbs on the ground. Have any of them received a formal diagnosis? If it's okay to ask, it seems like you were indicating or disclosing that before. So talk about your kids, 10 and 7, and let's get into it if you're comfortable doing so. So tell us a little bit about them.
They are fantastic. My daughter is in the highly capable. That's what it's a highly capable program. We like got like the little sheet about what the highly capable is, and I'm like, this is all going to be neurodivergent little kids. 100%. There is that is going to be everyone in this class. That is because like the description, like that's what that is, and I imagine that is something that we will see from my son when because he tested for that last week.
Oh, wow.
So I'm fairly dyslexic. I didn't read until the 4th grade.
Mm.
And so I was like, that's going to be something we have to watch out for. And I was wrong. My children are reading much more advanced stuff than I would be. And my son was a lot more like me. So I was really watching. I'm like, nope, he's just jumped right in, being able to embrace like reading graphic novels and that kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
loving the Dav Pilkey, Dog Man, and Captain Underpants.
Dogman, yes. Yeah,
And
yeah,
the fact
yeah.
that Dav Pilkey himself has ADHD and like that's kind of reflected in the writing. And
Oh wow, yeah. I feel like you're reminding me that this. I was part of a little conversation group in Anaheim, and because I saw the Dog Man book, and I said that looks like Captain Underpants, and whoever I was talking to was like, "Well, wouldn't you know it?" and started giving me this thing. So that's okay. And remind us the author's name again for those listening.
Dav Pilkey.
Yeah.
My son was singing a diarrhea song he got from the book the other day. And I'm like, yeah, this is like exactly very interesting to that grade level and thought pattern. And so I'm like, that makes that ability to read so much easier if you're reading stuff that you really want to. And so seeing with my kids being like, oh yeah, they are really into this, but they also so clearly have ADHD. And
Mm.
it is like, it was with my daughter being like, oh, this is very, very obviously ADHD. She is bouncing off the walls. This is the stereotypical ADHD where they're like, squirrel. And I'm like, how are you this stereotypical right now? Like, I'm like, yes, there's a squirrel outside, but we got to get your shoes on right now.
Yeah, even as an adult, I do catch myself saying, "Ooh, shiny." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in my 30s, "Oh, shiny" out loud. And a friend who knows me well enough goes, "Really?" You know? Yeah, yeah, I feel you.
What's the most challenging thing you would say being a parent who has ADHD, trying to raise children with ADHD? Because I know in my practice, I've had clients that have relayed to me that basically sometimes it's triggering. Sometimes, you see something in your kids and it may either bother you or you relate to it in some way.
Part of it is, yeah, like, I want them to get their shoes on in the morning, and this is hard for them to do. And I'm running behind, and I also need to get stuff done. And I can't count on them to, like this morning, trying to get my son to put his clothes on and come downstairs from his room and being like, okay, like I'm running behind. I need you to just put your clothes on, buddy, and then we'll go and have breakfast. And then, like 5 minutes later, realizing, oh, he's still up there doing something. And I'm like, are you putting your clothes on? He's like, oh, I got distracted. And I'm like, I know. I know that because you're not down here. I know, but can you do it?
Yeah, dad has a schedule too. My working memory of remembering where you're at in this process is already challenged, and I have to go back up and remind you.
Yeah. What we were talking about earlier with like the acceptance piece is also like really hard, but so important where you're just like, why can't you just put on your clothes? Okay, I know why. And I got to work with you on this. And this is hard because it doesn't make sense to my brain anymore why you can get distracted during taking off your pajamas and putting on new clothes. For me, that's not a problem anymore. Usually.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You have to almost catch yourself like in that zone of, am I judging or do I have to come back? Right. Understanding this is part of the diagnosis. This is part of ADHD.
Mealtime is always tricky with like making sure they're staying seated at the table and not getting up to go do something else and forgetting. And then also being like, I really want to teach you about what's going on with your brain so that you understand
Right.
and you can work with it and not have the same difficulties I did and not knowing why I was doing the things that I was doing.
And that doesn't sound like a very accessible moment to do that in, to give the like, and now for a lecture while you're changing from your pajamas into your clothes so that we can get out of the door and get to school so that I can get to work all on time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like one of the lessons I've learned about kids is to always assume that they're trying their best. They want to please you. They love you so much and they need that love. They're not giving you a hard time. They're having a hard time.
Mm.
Like starting there and being like, okay, how can I help them through this hard time? If I can't do it this right now, when can I do that? And how can I make this easier for next time?
Yeah.
I love that. That's
Ditto.
so important.
Those are some golden nuggets, man. I love that, having a hard time, not giving a hard time. So how do you manage your energy throughout all of this? Not just being a parent, but of course included. What are some will curb energy hacks?
So it's making sure I'm sleeping right. There's this hierarchy of where I need to be looking at my energy. And it always starts with sleep. Sleep also just supports my ADHD management so much. If I have bad sleep, I'm probably going to have bad ADHD management, and I'm probably going to then make bad choices about like what I'm eating and how I'm spending my time and exercising. And so it's like, okay, it starts there. But yeah, then making sure that I'm fueling my body properly, that I'm exercising. One of the things I have to teach my kids is like, hey, yeah, if you're lying on the couch, you're going to want to keep lying on the couch. Sometimes you need to get up and do stuff, and it doesn't feel like it at the time, but you'll have more energy after you do that. A lot of my energy things come from acknowledging that I can't just force myself to have energy. Like, I can't be like, well, I'm tired and I want to write, but I guess I have to, like, okay, well, can I go on a walk instead for 15 minutes? And that's something that will get that movement in, let me have a bit more energy. There's all these basic things that I need to do. And then going, oh, but I don't have this interoception that always tells me that I'm thirsty or that I'm hungry. And just being like, okay, checking in with myself. And then also acknowledging that I'm not going to have energy all the time. So we have our circadian rhythm with when we wake and when we sleep. And then within that, we also have our ultradian rhythms, which are these like 90-minute cycles of high and low energy, and being like, maybe I can use that as a good time to rest. So just respecting my body. Oh yeah, it needs to have these rest cycles. It needs to take breaks. It can't just work forever. I think those are the big keys for energy management.
Breaks are so important, and those are one of the huge things people forget about. Is like, where's the recharge time? Where's the refractory time, recovery time? People try to be productive in a way. I'm going to schedule myself and maximize, or I need to fit everything in. But it's like, no. You need to also have breaks and actually eat a lunch and actually go for a walk or something else that recharges you.
Oh yeah. Like, talk to a friend. I often will forget to mention like that social aspect of, oh, I will have so much more energy. So I do a game night with some of the dads in the neighborhood. And over the winter, we had fewer of those. And the last one we went to, I was like, I'm tired. And I went, and then I was like, the next day I was so productive because I had so much more energy from having that great social time of talking to other adults. Even if I'm kind of an introvert, it still is really important.
Right. It still is important to get outside that bubble and that comfort zone, because you need socialization. We're human beings.
I think something that I've been playing with too is like, okay, if I have these high capacity days and these low capacity days, how can I like make sure that I'm not overdoing it? I'm sure we've all had these times where we're like, man, I've crushed it on everything. Everything on my to-do list got done. Tomorrow's going to be amazing. And then you hit tomorrow and you're like, I'm burnt out today. I can't
Oh my
do
God, yeah.
jack. And it's like, oh, it's because I was borrowing from my future self yesterday. Like, I was stealing my future resources. That is how I was crushing it so badly yesterday, is because I was borrowing from the future, which is kind of like how I view like hyperfocus. Hyperfocus is us borrowing our executive functions from the future. And it works out for a while, but we're going to run those reserves dry. Because like, oh yeah, wrote that huge paper in a weekend. And then it took me a week to recover because I did all that work at one time.
Yeah. That's the ADHD way, right? It's like this all or nothing. We're all in or nothing at all, right?
Yeah, but I do also love the robbing Peter to pay Paul narrative here,
Mhm.
right? Like that is important. I don't think about this often. And I consider myself to be the poster child for the 1% of hyperactive full 360. I am hyperactive physically, I'm hyperactive mentally, etc. If I get into that flow state and I'm jamming, I'm going like from 6 a.m. gym to 6 p.m. and full no breaks, as Aaron put it, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely, the next day I'm left there confused at the gym at 8, an hour and a half late, right? Like, why am I here late and why do I have no energy to do the things I did yesterday at the gym? You know, I think that's I've definitely caught myself in that state of confusion, and I've gotten a little illumination today. I will now rethink about that on a Monday or Tuesday when I'm going really hard by 2 p.m. and think, hey man, tomorrow at this time, are you going to need a double shot espresso just to get to 4 p.m.? Because you're doing this today, you know?
Yeah. And sometimes like that's fine. But sometimes it's like, oh yeah, that I pushed really hard and now it's going to take a while for me to get back to where I was.
So you named your podcast Hacking Your ADHD.
Mhm.
And when I think of hacking, I envision like a computer hacker trying to hack into a network or hack the code. What does hacking mean for you? From your perspective, where does that name come from, and what does the idea of hacking mean to you?
Yeah, so it took me a long time to name the podcast, which seems very silly when I ended up with Hacking Your ADHD. I was always like a big, loved reading like Life Hacker and doing life hacks and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read a definition of hacking that really just clicked with me, which was finding a novel solution to a problem. And I was like, oh, dang, that's exactly what I want. I'm looking for a novel solution to these problems that I have with my ADHD.
I love that.
Yeah, ditto.
And novelty is part of what helps motivate us. Novel solutions.
This hits so many things. I need a different solution than typically would be seen.
Mhm.
I need the novelty of it. And it's acknowledging that, yeah, this comes with issues that I wouldn't otherwise see.
What would you say are some of the most helpful hacks that you've stumbled upon over the years that you have in your life?
So yeah, obviously the acceptance piece that we talked about. One of the ones that's also I need to explore more at some point, but has been very important is figuring out the sequencing of things where it's very easy for us to be like, this is how I do things, but if I change up the order, maybe it'll work way better. The obvious thing here would be like trying to take your pants off before you take off your shoes. It just,
Mhm.
or, putting your shoes on before you put on your pants. It won't work. I've seen my children try. One of the places where I did this was my problem of taking out the trash and needing to reline the bin and never remembering to do it. Then changing the sequence to removing the trash from the bin, then relining it, and then taking the trash out to the big bin outside.
Mm.
I don't forget because it's in that order now, and I don't have that doorway effect of going in and out of the house. And it solved that problem completely for me. I've never had it again.
Yeah, the behavioral sequencing is so important when we think about how we approach habits.
Yeah.
What I've heard is also called kind of this habit chain
Mhm.
effect, how we stack habits on top of each other and what we do when. So when we think about designing our day and putting those sequences of habits together, sometimes we're not breaking it down into those granular pieces like I do this, then I do this, then I do this. Most time people when they think of habits, they just put some generalized thing like, oh, go to the gym, then do some meditation or something. But they don't be like, sit down on the cushion, have
Yeah.
this thing open, like, really get granular with it. But that does tend to help our brains, right? If we can break it down into actionable steps.
I heard this with you and Chris on your most recent podcast, Will, the interview with Chris Wang. She was talking about to-do lists, right? And that
Yeah.
she's changed the way that she writes to-do lists because she used to write them exactly as Aaron is putting it. And I did too, right? Where it was like, call mom. And
Yeah,
you're like,
some overly general
yeah,
thing.
for what? Right? Like, or like, oh yeah, like schedule with dentist. There's no date, no time, no what the appointment is. And so she's changed it. And I laughed to myself in the kitchen thinking I've done the same thing recently as well, where it's like, call Aaron and ask him to email Micah about the Tuesday 10:30 meeting. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
When you read it on a Sunday with the Sunday scaries looming over you, you're like, oh, I have to do this exact thing at this time, et cetera. And it is sanity saving.
Yeah, or like having like post-it note that you like wrote somewhat phone number on, and you find it like 6 months later, and you're like, "Is this still relevant? Who is this?"
Oh, amen. I still think this to this day. I'm glad that Apple brought bump back. Like we can bump. It was like 10 years ago. Now it's back. I don't know why they don't do this. If you're listening, make this adjustment. When you put someone's contact in your phone, I would like a location or a time of day or where the hell I was when I did that. Because if I could see someone's phone, like their contact,
Mm.
it says it's the 10th Paul that I have in my phone. It's like Paul, no last name, because of course I didn't save a last name. And it just is Paul and the number. I would like to know that it was Paul number in this city, in this state, at that restaurant. And you're like, oh, I was having dinner at Pesh last week. I remember Paul. He was our bartender, right? I don't know why it's such an easy little algorithm. We could have that,
Other hacks that work really well, like having like command hooks so that you can just hang things up wherever you need them.
The little
Mm.
sticky hooks you put
Yeah.
places. Yeah.
Yeah, where do you put them?
I have one right here for an extra set of headphones. A lot of clutter comes from not having a place for something to live. Having these easy hooks to put things on, suddenly these things live there. Like on that same hook, I have this really tiny little flash drive, and it's got a hair tie on it too. And I can hang it on that hook. I have used that drive so many times now because I've never lost it because that's where it lives.
Yes. Yes.
Like it needs a spot on the counter that it goes, or a
A
hook that goes.
designated place, a receptacle
That-
for that thing.
Yeah, it needs
Yeah.
to be an ADHD t-shirt. The counter is not a place. Yeah, that's great.
With my kids, instead of just having shoes by the door, we have a bin that the shoes go in.
Everything needs a home.
Yeah.
I think that's what we could say about that hack, right? Everything needs a place.
Yeah.
Where does this
Mhm.
live?
But then along with that being like, it also needs to be a visible space for us because we will forget about it if it doesn't. Clear bins that you can put things in
Right.
much better than putting them away in a drawer. And so, yeah, doing these like, okay, find a place for these things to live, make sure I can see them so that I don't forget about them, and making it something where, if something doesn't have a place to live, kind of examining why. Is this something I need? Is this something that I lost this? Would I replace this? Or I saw recently on some social media, like, if this got poop on it, would I replace it?
Oh, I love that it's, I mean, like we're bringing the spirit of Marie Kondo into the room. Does this spark joy? But it's a much more fun framing. If this
Yeah.
got poop on it, would I replace it? That's a great,
Yeah, and I
that's,
was like, oh yeah, there's a ton of things like yeah, no, that's
well, that would be gone.
yeah.
If this had got poop on it, would I
I know,
replace
I'm
it?
loving it. No, I'm loving it. It's a really, because like what Marie Kondo is doing, the poetic version, does this spark joy? Very
Yeah.
philosophical, very spiritual, right? But I
Yeah.
love there's something very ADHD kind of like punk about the like, if I got some shit on it, would I throw it away and never return? You know, like, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that
Do I
for
need
sure.
this shit?
Do I need this shit? Yeah. Do I need this shit? Yeah.
Also, like switching directions, but with the same idea is I try to do that with maladaptive behaviors I have, where I'm like,
Mm.
Hmm.
oh, I developed this as a protection mechanism for myself when I was a kid. I don't need to do this anymore.
Is there an example you can
Oh,
give
yeah.
us of one way you've done that?
So like that is part of the using anxiety as a crutch to not be late to things. Like,
Right.
oh, I developed that because I did not understand my ADHD. I didn't know I had ADHD, and so I needed a way to make sure I was on time, especially like in boarding school where I got into so much trouble for being late to things.
Mm.
I need to let go of that anxiety because it's not serving me anymore. It's just making me stressed out. It's making me not focus as well. I can use time timers. I can use alarms. I can use so many other things to make sure that I'm not late to everything.
Yeah.
So not letting that anxiety take over a certain part of your brain, occupy your thoughts and your mental energy going into that anxious thought loop, letting that go.
Mhm.
What are some things maybe you say to yourself? Because this might be
Mm.
helpful for listeners. Because I had a client just yesterday that was like, I can't control my thoughts. I don't know what to say to myself. And I'm like, yes, you can. You can. It just takes practice. And he's like, no, I can't. I can't do that. It's impossible. And I'm like, okay, take a deep breath. Like, you got this.
I think first one is you don't have to believe everything you think. Reminding myself, like, just because I'm thinking this does not mean I need to believe it.
Ooh.
Which is also very important when like your partner does something and you're mad about what they did and you're like, they did this on purpose. And I'm like, no, they didn't. My wife doesn't want to hurt me in these
Right. Right.
ways. Like she, if I talk to her about it, she'd be like, what? Oh, I didn't even realize that was something that bothered you,
Oh my God.
you know? And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like I don't have to believe these thoughts just because it's in my head doesn't make it true. I know this because I have so many things that I'm like, well, yeah, my keys are just right there. And I'm like, oh no, they're not. That's okay. My brain has been lying to me.
Mm.
It was misinformed. And then I can do things in new ways. I can learn new ways to do things and I can learn to do things in healthy ways. Yeah. I rely on anxiety to be late or to prevent myself from being late. I rely on timers to be on time, reframing those thoughts. What can I do differently? Yeah. Especially with those things where it's like, I can't blah, blah, blah. Like I can't get out the door on time. I can't. Do I have any examples of this not being true? Do I have examples of when I did get out on the door on time? What led to that being true? What can I do that would make this easier to replicate?
Yeah, that is such an important point because what we focus on, what ADHDers tend to focus on is like, do we focus on the negative and what I should do if I was neurotypical or what's the expectation in society or by others? I should just be able to do this, right? Those kind of things, those self-judgment type of
Yeah.
thoughts. Or do we learn to just accept some of this stuff and say, what was effective? Wait, when was the time where I did do that thing and it worked for me? And what did I
Mm.
do that helped me do that effectively? What's constructive? What's effective? And for us to approach that and do that without shame. Hey, this is okay. You know what? Screw it. Yeah, I use a time timer. My kids use a time timer. It's not
Oh,
juvenile. It's helpful.
yeah.
Let's use it.
Yeah. I have like 10 of these around the house that are just like anytime like kids, I'm like, okay, we're going to be going to the bus in 10 minutes. Put that on. You know, we're going to go to swim lessons in half an hour. Put that on. And I know a lot of people also like using like Alexas and stuff to like have verbally be able to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just for our listeners, if you don't know what the time timer is, it's a clock, but it has a dial on it and that turns red or a color. They have different colors of these things, but it turns a color and it's like a kitchen timer, but it has this visual clock face and you can see it counting down at the corner of your eye, which is just an amazing product because it's a timer, but it's visual and it just works for our brains.
Yeah. Yeah. The difference between hearing an alarm go off out of the void, right?
Mhm.
When did I set that? What was that for versus something you can see across the room and
Yeah,
watch
well,
it?
when you have that little pie chart of how much time is left, so I can glance I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I got about 20 minutes left. I can see that there. Yeah, it's always the other funny thing of being like remembering that transition times exist and that
Yes.
I have a doctor's appointment at 10. I should get there at 10. No, I should get there at like 9:45 so I can park and go up and check in. There
Mhm.
is all this other stuff that needs to happen rather than just getting from point A to point B.
Yeah,
Planning for
famously.
the transitions
Yeah.
or the cleanup times or the buffer times
Yeah.
Mhm.
or the traffic or the walking from the house to the car to then, oh, I forgot the keys and have to go back. Like,
Right. Yeah, yeah, you have to include the 5 times you returned inside the house to get the things that you left before leaving the house. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Famously, Ari Tuckman called this like the how Google Maps has ruined us all because it makes you really think that point A to point B happens in a blink.
I actually did that this morning, right? I was like, I had this assumption in my mind. I was like, all right, my computer will just turn on. I have everything set up. It should only take a few minutes. Well, I go to like click my mouse to have the screensaver come off, right? And nope, computer is not on. And my computer's been doing this thing recently the last couple of days where I don't know if it's a power surge or what, or maybe my computer's getting old, but it was not on and it was not turning on. I clicked the
Mm.
button. Nope, not coming on. So I had to unplug and replug. I did that a couple times. And then finally it came on. And it's just this weird gremlin-esque kind of thing that happens
Yeah.
in our world
Yeah.
of ADHD where it's like, wait, the world should work this way. This thing should happen this way. And I set up my assumption based on that. And then lo and behold, nope, it did not work out in this like seamless way that I thought this best case scenario planning.
Mhm.
So for ADHD, we kind of need to think about what's the reality.
Yeah. What could happen? I mean, it is sort of like isn't that the catch-22 that we have with our brain wiring? Is that like we both struggle with the the forethought, the Boy Scouts honor, right? The being prepared for that eventuality. And we also hate the thing for not working the way that it told us it was going to work, right? We get the emotional dysregulation of the injustice of the computer not turning on. And then also we did not plan for something actually pretty normal. We have one final question along these lines. We're talking about habits, habit stacking, hacking. It is one thing to discover both spiritually and sort of pragmatically that, oh, I used to use anxiety to be on time places. Now I use a time timer to be on time places. How do you make that hack stick, right? So how does that habit stay, right? One thing to discover it, another to continue doing it.
I like using journaling to help me clarify my thoughts so that I can revisit ideas. Because often when I try and think through things, I will kind of get in loops of like, this is this thing and this thing and this is this thing and this is this. And I'm like, that didn't get me anywhere. But when I like am writing it down, it's like, okay, this led to this and this led to this. And this is why I like that and can really let me explore my thoughts in a much more productive way. I have a podcast that makes it so it's much easier for my tools to stick because I write about them all the time and be like, hey, this is working for me and I like it. Although sometimes I'll go back and I'll be like, oh, I wrote an episode about this thing. Well, maybe I should do that. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
It has been very funny when someone like, oh yeah, I love this episode. I'm like, what episode was that?
I'm so
remember
glad
this
you're
anymore.
saying this. Oh, well, I'm so glad you're saying it's already happening to Aaron, or at least me, Aaron. It's already happening. People are like, hey, listen to that show you just did. I was like,
Yeah.
we did that?
Yeah, but writing's a great tool that helps to encode things into your brain and into your memory
Mm.
and helps us to externalize our thoughts,
Mhm.
like we talked about. And it also helps us to then reflect and have a space of analysis and then set intentions in a different way.
Yeah.
What's working? What's not working for me?
Yeah. And writing out my intentions of like, hey, this is how I'm want this day to go, and I'm going to use these tools. I haven't done this recently, but one thing I have done is do these future me emails where I'll write myself an email to the future. And then 6 months later, I'll get an email be like, hey, these are the tools I like right now. And this is how it's going. And then get that email and be like, oh, yeah.
And you'll
I'm
will you like schedule send this to
That's
your
what I'm
future
hearing.
self?
I'm doing that.
That's a great hack. Yeah.
I love Boomerang on Gmail. I've loved it ever since they invented that widget. And I am absolutely scheduling a, hey, Steven, this is what's working today for 6 months from now. And I already know the laugh out loud funny that's going to be when I read that and go, well, I stopped doing that thing.
Yeah. How did you just real quick, how did you get journaling to stick?
By not worrying about if it was going to stick. I stopped doing the, hey, journal, it's been a while since I wrote to you. I just, when I need to think about something, I just write. It's okay to be inconsistent with this. I just do it when I want to, and I just do it when I need to. I have this like 5-year journal that I keep next to my bed where you just like write like a line or two about the day, just 365 pages, and each day has 5 entries.
Hmm.
And so then I'll add an entry and be like, oh man, 3 years ago I was doing this. Wild.
Oh, on that day. Oh, I get it. Each page is the
Yeah.
day, but within a 5-year time span. So you can see by the 3rd or 4th year in what you wrote on that day 2 or 3 years ago. Oh, that's cool.
And so that's great for that kind of journaling. But also, yeah, just on my computer, I'll just be like, here is this file that I have that I will update occasionally with journal thoughts. And sometimes I try and add in hashtags so I can search it better. But oftentimes it's just kind of like a hodgepodge of like, I don't really need to read this again. I just want to have this out of my head so that I can think through it and being like, this is a specific tool that I use. It's not something that needs to be consistent.
Just a means to offload some of those thoughts, get it in a repository somewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've reached the end.
Yes, we could keep going forever because we are who we are, and it's part of our beauty. Is we could sit in this circle until someone told us that relate to something. But now is the time that you are to plug your pluggables, to steal a phrase from a podcast host I'm a fan of. So this is your pluggables time.
You can always find me at any podcast player really at this point with Hacking Your ADHD. Comes up real easily now. I am now also on YouTube, which has been fun to get that going. Just the podcast, but maybe we will see if I'm going to add other stuff, which, yeah, I guess we are going to be adding other stuff soon because we're going to do some like live AMA stuff there. Also on Blue Sky, and that is the extent of my social at this point because I can't manage to do more, and I'm not really thrilled with a lot of the other platforms. So Blue Sky,
Right.
and of course hackingYourADHD.com for all of that, and all the episodes and stuff is there too.
Wonderful.